Let's pray. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O God, my rock and my salvation. May the words of life become life in our hearts, in our hands, in our feet, in our walk and in our talk, to the glory of your name. Amen. During the morning services, we have started a series on the Ten Commandments, and we call it the Game of Stones. And today we are at the very first commandment, and the title of the message is, Where are you going to put God? A man purchased a statue of Christ at an auction, and he put it in the living room. And the next day, his wife decided that the statue belonged somewhere else, in a different room. And so when she picked up the statue, a little daughter of 5 years old saw her mother moving the statue, and she blurted out, "Where are you going to put God?" Now, this little girl had a lot of theology going for her. It's a very profound question. Where are you going to put God? And the question is also to you and to me, where is God in our lives, in our walk and our talk? Where did we put God? In the Decalogue, as it's called, Exodus 20, we enter a world of many gods, a world of gods for everything in the world. And we know the story of Exodus 20. It's a story of where Moses got from God the commandments, the 10 commandments and more. It's a story that is filled with so much. There's an earthquake. There are thunder, lightning. There's everything dramatic you can imagine. No wonder Hollywood had such a good time recreating this whole scene. If you watch the 10 Commandments, a very old movie. But all of that were there. And in this world where the people of God were just out of Egypt, a few weeks gone, God called Moses to the top of Sinai. God had an appointment with him there. And if we place ourselves just for one moment there, it must have been something extraordinary, something out of another world. No wonder they were frightened beyond their wits. No wonder the people were just so afraid, because what is going on? And in this whole drama, God called Moses. Moses, come up here. I want to talk to you. It's something unheard of for them. Coming out of Egypt, being there for so many years, and their forefathers have been there, and they lived in this whole world where gods were not beings coming down to talk to you. It's not a world where gods are even remotely on your level. They not remotely even go down to your level. No, gods were somewhere up there. And here, Moses, come up. I want to talk to you. And Moses went up to this very steep route up the mountain. And I think it must have been a very lonely route. You see, brothers and sisters, when God calls us up, it might be a very lonely road. A lonely road for many of us. To follow God is not always that easy. It's not a walk in the park. But God calls him up, and God wants to talk to him, and God talks with him business. It wasn't just a chit-chat. It was business from God's side. And we know the story how he went up and God talked to him, and he was in God's presence. He came down, and the people of God were dancing around the calf. And he was so angry, threw the stones down, and they scattered all over the place, and he had to go up again, and we know the story. And then, at some point, we get Moses, and he spoke to the people. And the words are so profound. When we look at the Ten Commandments, when we talk about that, there's sometimes the question, but do we still have to talk about it? Is it still relevant to you and to me? Is it still relevant 3,000 years down the line to you and me living in Korea, living here in 2019? I mean, we passed the age of in that time, it is pre-age, it is modernism. We passed that, we are post-modernized, and we are even post-modernized. Shall we talk about law, about commandments? And I think yes. On this day, where we also celebrate the Reformation, I think it is a very bold yes. We have to talk about it. We live in that strange culture, strange time, where somebody said, well, we're not entirely relativism. It's not entirely that on our platter. But on the other hand, we also don't live in a culture entirely consist of absolutism. We sort of in a culture where things are making up as we go rules. People don't like to talk about rules. We don't like to talk about, is this wrong or is this right? Right and wrong. Well, it's a bit of a hazy field. It's a bit of a field where you don't really want to wander, because then you judge. And we say the question to ask these days, does it work for you? If it works for you, well done, but it doesn't work for me. And so we go on in this world where we lost this compass, this direction. And it's in this world where we became morally corrupt. We see that in governments, we see that in churches, we see that in companies, in commerce. So we have to get to a place where we get to this point that we hear God again. If I look at the Decalogue, at the Ten Commandments, the problem that we have today is not so much a moral problem as a theological problem. And this is where God starts his conversation with people. And this is where Moses came and he talks to the people of God, and he starts with these absolutely profound words. I am the Lord your God. I think sometimes we skip that. We go to the commandments, you should do that, you shouldn't do that. And we get to a lot of shoulds and shouldn'ts. And we miss this very important part where God says, I am the Lord your God. Actually, Moses starts to say, and God spoke all of these words. There is authority. It doesn't just come from a newspaper. It doesn't come from somewhere in a blog or in a vlog on the internet. No. It's God speaking. There's authority. You have to listen. And then these wonderful words. I am the Lord, your God. These are very, very important. For the people there, this must have been a very profound moment. It must have been something that they did not expect. Usually gods don't speak like that, if they speak at all. Usually gods are these quiet beings that thunder when they're angry, and there's all kinds of signs and things going on, and people try to appease their gods. But this God says to them, I am yours. I am the Lord, your God. We need to understand something about the world in that time. Men's belief about God passed through 3 stages. The one stage we know is polytheism, the belief in many gods. At that stage, people believe in a whole host of gods, the God of the sun, the God of the moon, the God of rain, and all kinds of gods. It was just a world full of gods, and everybody tried to appease their gods. And at some point, there were so many they didn't know what to do. And then came the stage of Monotheism. Well, every country had its own god. And so every country had its own god. They appeased, they fought in the name of that god. And when they had some battles going on with neighboring nations, it was a battle of the gods. If you look at Hollywood, it sounds the same these days. The gods are all in this conflict. And everybody had his own, every country had its own god. It was so much a tribal god thing. And then came monotheism. One God. One God. And this is where they were. God tried to tell them, I'm your God, but I'm bigger than all these others. You cannot take me as one of them. You cannot compare me to one of them. Then this wonderful thing that God tells them, so in contrast with these regional gods, these tribal gods were set where they were. They live on mountains. That was the belief. So every mountain and every tribe had its own god. And if the people move, well, the god stays behind. God comes and tells them, here in the wilderness, here en route, God tells them, I am the Lord your God. And this is not a finger showing, do this and do that. This is two embracing arms. I am the Lord your God. And this is a significance to you and to me. The God that spoke, there's a God the same today. And that's the God that tells you and me, I am the Lord, your God, with his arms enfolding you. With his arms embracing you. With his arms saying, come to me. That's the God who told them, he says, I am the Lord your God. And then he connects that with the emancipation. He says, who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery. For us, that's not, well, it's history. But for them, it was absolutely, it was gospel. I'm the one who brought you out. I'm the one who's with you now. And if I brought you out, I will stay with you and I will bring you in. Isn't that great? I brought you out. Never forget that. It's not one of the other gods. They don't live. They stone. They are just its. But I'm living. Isn't that something to you and to me that God tells us, I've brought you this far. Look back on your life's journey. Sometimes we look back at our life's journey and we wonder, it was so full of trauma and so full of pain and whatever. But look where you're now. God said, I brought you out. I brought you to this place. And maybe you have inside you a lot of doubts. Well, what about tomorrow? God says, I'm with you here. I'm speaking to you, and I will bring you in. I am the God of the covenant. I will not break my covenant with you. For me, that's fantastic. That's something to hold on. And then, if we understand this, if we understand that God is not bound to one mountain, but that He is also the traveling God, He's the God with us, then we understand the rest of this Decalogue, the rest of these commandments that God says, thou shalt not have other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything. You shall not bow down to it. Then it makes sense. Because this is the God who says, I'm your God. I'm the Lord your God. I'm the Lord of the Exodus. I'm the God who emancipated you. I'm the Lord of new promises. And he says, everything starts with me. If I'm central to you, I will lead you where I promised you to go. What a gracious God. What a gracious gospel. And then the Ten Commandments are not anymore this you shall not and you shall. It becomes this road, this path that we take. Becomes the boundaries. It becomes the safe boundaries in which we follow God. Not because we have to, but in the New Testament, in our New Testament reading this afternoon, the gospel reading, Jesus comes and he makes this a relational thing. He puts the word love into it. Maybe they missed that. But Jesus comes to you and to me this afternoon. He puts the word, love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. He says, that's all you need to know. If that is in place, if it is in place that God is central, that God is your God, God is the one who meets you and who meets me, where we are, in the middle of the desert, in the middle of the wilderness, in the middle of our situation, wherever we are today, in this afternoon. And God says, if I'm in the middle, just follow me. And I will lead you to a place where I've promised you. Whatever your fears are, the journey might not be easy. And for them it was not easy. But he was with them every step of the way, every day, every night, every moment. And then we understand, if we understand that God says, don't treat me like the other gods. Don't make an image of me. You see, an image reduces God to an it. God says, I'm not an it. I'm the living God. I'm not a commodity. I'm not a thing. I am a relation. And I'm in a relationship. And that's where the gospel of the Old Testament comes in. We have a relationship. That's why God says, no other gods, no substitutes, no cheap imitations. That's where God asks you and me, where did you put God? Where's God in your life? Is he the central person, the central deity in your entire existence? Or is he someone that I just use as a spare wheel, someone in the corner, and I take him out, and I put him back, and I take him out when I need him. And that asks of you and me surrender, repentance. And this is an ongoing thing that we say, God, you're my first. You're my God. And I will honor you with my life. And that brings me to the conclusion. If we take the commandments, let's take it from the dead, cold stones and put it in a warm heart, willing hands, and dancing feet, and the world will change. There will be reformation. Stone-cold commandments turn into blissful blessings of hope and life. Can I say that again? Let's take the commandments from that dead cold stones that we think it is. Let's put it in our warm hearts, our open hearts, our willing hands, and our dancing feet, and the world will change. Stone-cold commandments turn into blissful blessings of hope and life.